went someplace and heard a person mention me by my name. I got very excited. More excited than I had been in years. Because this person, whoever they were, was not my uncle, sister, or co-worker. I was so looking forward to making this person's acquaintance and getting the entire backstory in regard to how they became aware of me. And perhaps more importantly, discovering the component factors that led them to speak of me to others. I'd always dreamed of being spoken of to others by someone other than myself. Naturally, I was curious in regard to what my name, and therefore my person, meant to the speaker of it. And I was almost desperate to find out how many other times they had spoken of me, and to how many people exactly. It was probably too much to hope for an exact count, but I would settle for an approximate number. Were there particular settings and contexts that prompted them to mention me more than at other times? And if indeed there were, might more of such contexts be encouraged? That would certainly be my wish. I knew enough to be subtle in suggesting it. It would be too much, for instance, to imagine people bringing my name up before making love. But I just couldn't help but imagine it, and so I did. I started to hope that this possible utterance of my name, when utilized right before lovemaking, might suffuse the atmosphere with extra promise, the bedroom being, on certain occasions, a bit of the roll of the dice. It would comfort me to hear, through the grapevine of course, that when my name was, shall we say, whispered into the ear of one of the lovers, momentum did not falter or fade. The impersonation of fulfillment was not called on to make an appearance, and the train actually arrived at the station. This was a most satisfying contemplation, since its thoughtful origins would make my joy at having heard my name mentioned larger than the pleasure that accompanies recognition, since I'd now begun to picture how others might also benefit from it. When celebrating oneself, it is prudent to balance out one's heady feeling with some consideration for people in general. I was suddenly aware of a wise and expansive aspect of my character that must have laid dormant until this moment. Well, it was time to introduce myself to the person who had spoken of me. But it was a crowded room, and when I looked around, I no longer saw the person from whose mouth my name had sprung. I became more distressed than I'd been in years, and was visited there and then by an unimaginable sensation of loss. After all, it had only been a moment ago that I had, for the first time in my life, felt myself publicly found. When I finally emerged from a deep and familiar sense of invisibility, I asked myself, was there a way forward? No clear answer presented itself, so I went up to the first person I saw, although in truth, I saw a lot of people. But I picked one out of the many, in the same way that I had been picked out, to be spoken of to the many ever so recently. And I asked this selected person, desperate as I was for a way forward, I asked him, had he seen the person who spoke of me? And who might you be, he replied. This was a question I'd always feared might come. I was not prepared for it because I had not, despite years of looking into the matter, been able to come to a firm or even wobbly conclusion on the subject. There I was, the prisoner of a brutal irony. At the very moment when my name had been mentioned, and I would have had the opportunity to inquire as to why it had been, and what exactly it signified, and thus got to know more, or at least got to know something about myself from an outside and hopefully objective source. At that very moment, the messenger had vanished into thin air. "How do you mean?" I asked, hoping for an escape hatch, by replying to his penetrating question with a question of my own. "Well, how can I tell you if I've heard you brought up, if I don't know who you are?" "Raymond," I said. "I'm Raymond." It wasn't true. I didn't even look like a Raymond. If anyone actually knew me, they'd know my name was Paul. "Never heard of you," he said, and walked away.